I don't know why, but Christians have this reputation for being anti-science. And I say I don't know why, but I actually kind of do know why, because even just as I'm talking about apologetic natured stuff, and even just on Sunday, I was talking about questions of Genesis 1, and people were like, well, the scientists believe this, or the scientists believe that, and they would go in as if like they were completely against, it was like Christianity or science. But you're saying science led you into belief in God, which led to you to Christianity. Can you touch on that a little bit in your journey?
Yeah, so what happens is in any scene, any crime scene, you pick up pieces of evidence. So let's say, for example, on a crime scene, I discover, a pair of glasses, and then I discover a cup, and then from these things, I make an inference. In other words, I look at those facts that I've gathered, and then I start to try to figure out, well, how can I explain those facts? And then I arrive at the most reasonable explanation for those facts. That's called an inference. It's an inference from evidence. So there's a difference between facts and inferences. Now, science is good because it allows us to gather all kinds of data, facts. But that doesn't mean that the conclusion's a fact. So you might say, well, okay, I've gathered this evidence in science, and from this I infer that evolution is true. Okay, fine. That's an inference. This doesn't make evolution a fact. The facts are over here. These are the pieces of evidence. Those are the facts. The conclusion, evolution, that's an inference from the facts. Now, it turns out, as Christians, we can use the exact same data that science provides us, the facts at the crime scene, but we may actually come to an entirely different conclusion based on the same facts. And by the way, this happens in every criminal trial I do. I'll bring up 10 pieces of evidence. Well, the defense attorney does not step up when it's his turn and bring up 10 new pieces of evidence. He doesn't. He just points to the same 10 pieces of evidence I've already entered, brings up a new expert to give a different inference from those same 10 pieces of evidence. So it turns out that I think that intelligent design, the idea that God is the author of what's in DNA, is a much better inference from the same scientific facts that the evolutionists try to use to get their inference. So don't be afraid of the science. The science just gives us the facts. We're still free to draw the most appropriate inference from the facts. How did I get the facts? I use science to get the facts.
Now,
So how did I get the inference? I use my logical reasoning process to get the inference.
would you say that's the work of the philosopher and the theologian, or can the scientist do the inference as well? Like how does
Well,
that relationship work out?
now I will tell you, this is where I think the rub kind of comes in. Because I think that the process of gathering the facts is a scientific process, and most scientists are very good at that. But the act of reasoning to an inference involves some philosophy, some understanding of the rules of evidence, that the rules, in other words, it's not about the science that got me the facts. It's about how do I reason philosophically about the facts afterwards. And I think they've got a lot of really good scientists who are good at getting us the facts, but that's where their job really ends.
Right.
Now philosophers pick up and thinkers pick up and try to argue for why you should conclude certain inferences from the facts. And sadly, a lot of scientists are not great philosophers.
Right.
So it turns out that the philosopher can access the same data the scientist gives us. The scientist's work is done. And then he might be in a better position, or she might be in a better position to reason toward an inference because they understand philosophically the nature of reasoning, which probably sometimes is a little bit better than the scientist who's really over here in the data collection.
Right.
So, for example, I have CSI officers who come to my crime scene and they collect the evidence, but they don't work the case.
Right.
They don't put the case together and puzzle it. Detectives do that. We have to reason, what does that data mean? What's the best explanation for that data? The CSI officer is responsible for one thing. Sometimes they are scientists who actually investigate the facts, the data, but then they're done. They don't get involved in putting the hooks on a suspect. We
Right.
do that because we have to reason through that process. Well, all of you who are watching or listening to us, you have the ability to reason given the data. Once the scientist gives us the data, you can step aside from that now and draw your own conclusions.
Yeah.